Hello, beautiful souls. Today we're going to talk about the topic of cognitive dissonance. What does it mean? How does it affect us in our awakening journey? And how do we work with it? This is actually a psychological term where our definitions, our beliefs, our values aren't lining up. They're in contrast to each other. This happens a lot in the awakening process because what we have believed up until this point, or what we have held value in up until this point, what we've even known as truth up until this point, begins to change and shift as we wake up more, we see more of the truth of what's going on around us. And then there is this dissonance between what we have known and what we know. And it can be quite disrupting and disturbing for people. And I want everybody to know that there are ways of working with it. Also, the way that I see this show up most for people is trying to place what they're learning about the underbelly of society and the dark forces that are at play here with what everything looks like on the surface, and how more people aren't aware or continue to be unaware. And so this ends up being a big part of the dissonances is now that they're seeing what is really underneath all of our structures, our media, our corporations, their beliefs, their religions, and they're trying to somehow align the new knowing with what they have known and what they see in society, and figure out how to be now in this world. So there's first this process of being able to even figure out how do I reconcile this, basically, and begin to kind of meld the two together. Like, where do I go from here, right? The other place I see this a lot is with people when they have repressed memories come to the surface. And this is a topic that I will go into specifically in another video, specifically about repressed memories. But it is, in effect, the same concept. It's information coming up from below, just like when we talked about in the conscious versus unconscious video. It's like more of that 90% of the unconscious coming to the surface, and it does not match with what we've consciously known, that 10%. So there's now this sort of disbelief in your own reality. And when this does affect your own memory of things, so even if this isn't a repressed memory, but let's just say this is your memory of childhood, and you're recognizing that something was more than it seemed, this can create a dissonance and almost a feeling of like, well, then what then do I trust? Or how do I trust? Or how do I know what is real if I've believed this was real or true, and now this seems to be real and true? Or there's this sort of layer on top of it, right? So we have to go into a little bit about the psyche, and it only being able to hold what it can hold at any specific time. Only being able to hold and process what it is capable of, what it has tools and skills to process at any specific time. So let's say this, you're not having your own repressed memory, but let's say that you grew up going to church. And as far as you know, everything was fine, but you just found out that the head of that church, the pastor or the priest, depending on what religion it was, you just found out that they were crossing the boundaries with children and doing inappropriate things. This has become public news, let's say. Okay, so this is going to create some cognitive dissonance for you around what you knew to be true at the time with this and where you built your beliefs about certain things, where you built your values about certain things, and now the new information that you're being given to know about your reality at this time is going to affect your beliefs. You're going to have to shift and change your beliefs because it's in the news. It's he's being indicted. It's irrefutable, right? And so, but it's still in contrary to what your experience was with this individual growing up. So where do you begin to kind of meld the places? Okay. And when you're in the waking up process, this can take time. And when you're in a memory recovery process, this can really take time, because in either one of these processes, and they often coincide, is that you're taking off layers. So what happens often in both of these processes, which, by the way, I mean, yeah, quite often one and the same, your reality starts this big. This is what you know. This is what your beliefs, truths, values are. And then another part of your consciousness over here in the 90% starts to recall things, right, that it always knew, because as we've talked about, that 90% is always collecting the information. It's just whether or not it fits into the construct of the 10% of reality that we're being told is true, or that we find to be important, needed, pertinent to the time, right? Survival, or just what is needed to get through the next moment. So you've got this place now where you started here, and some more of this consciousness is becoming awake, aware, alive, more alive, right? And it's like coming up against what you have known, which is our foundation of truth, security. It's where we built that place we orient around. We talked about orientation in another video. Okay, so now that we have this new info, we know this and this cannot be true, or at least they don't seem like they can simultaneously. So the first thing I will say is give it some time and space. Give it some time and space for this to breathe, and for your psyche to do what it naturally knows how to do, which is to integrate, is to stabilize, to adapt. It's superpower to adapt, right? So let it do what it does, but you got to give it some time and space. And what I often will tell people during this process is you can sort of suspend this new information that woke up. You can kind of suspend it over here. You can move it sort of away a little bit. I'm not saying deny it. There's a difference, because you also, I do watch people sometimes go into just denial. No, I'm just going to pretend like I did not just uncover that piece of information, because there's no room for it in my life. Either it's too much contrast for them and it's scaring them, or feels too destabilizing, or it's in too much contrast to someone they know and love, or that is providing support or stability for them. And so it's just, the timing's not right, is what I would say. So if it's not denial and you do want to be able to digest it, but you are still just like in disbelief of your own information that you're recovering, whether that is information from your own personal life, or from the environment you grew up in, or the environment that you're living in, you can kind of move it to the outer edge of your space. You are in charge. You get to decide, right? So you can kind of put it over there, and you don't have to say right away, yes, this is true, and accept it right into your reality. You can take your time with it. And also, just because it seems like it has to be, if this is true, this can't be true, that doesn't have to be the reality either. That doesn't have to be true either. It is actually possible for two things that are in total contrast to exist simultaneously, to coexist. That, and this may not be a favorable point of view. However, the truth is that pastor, that priest that was inappropriate with children, that crossed the boundary, and was sexually inappropriate, molested, touched, talked, I don't know, we're make-believing right now, but crossed the boundary, right? Could have also had a profound effect on another child's life, or even that child's life, by something that he shared, some way he supported them, some way he saw them. That does not excuse the other behavior, right? But both can be true simultaneously. And this is sometimes hard to grasp, because we want to instantly vilify or demonize the person who's done wrong and hurt another. But for the person who's been the experiencer, they may be trying to figure out how to put the two together. Or if you were on the outside, you may be still trying to figure out how to put the two together. Let's say, I was trying to keep this light, but I think we just got to go in a little bit deeper. Let's say that you, in your childhood home, one of your siblings is saying that your uncle molested them. Now, this was your favorite uncle, and he went to every one of your Little League games, and he took you for ice cream afterward, and he gave you money on holidays and on your birthday, and you can't imagine him ever doing anything like that. But you also don't want to tell your sibling they must be wrong. They must be remembering it wrong, or they're lying, right? Which that also does happen quite often, right? Particularly depending on how insidious this is. And we could go on about this for like a while, the layers and layers, right? It could be that the individual who had the positive experiences with uncle also had negative experiences with uncle, also was molested by uncle, and buried it much deeper, and doesn't like the fact that their sibling is now bringing this to the surface, because then it's triggering their stuff and they don't want to look at their stuff. So then this person gets scapegoated. That's actually a quite common experience. But for this purpose, we're going to say this individual is not wanting to make their sibling wrong, but can't wrap their mind around how the favorite uncle could also be capable of such hurt and harm, right? So what that person can do is, in that moment, she can put this on the edge of their space, not saying, no, this is impossible, didn't happen, not going into denial, but going into suspension, right? What this does is this gives all the parts of you that are perhaps in conflict or have confliction about what is happening, a little bit of space to like come around to the possibility that something else could be true, something else could be possible within what they have already known. It gives the psyche some time and space, right, to do what it does best, which is acclimate, adapt, and start to be able to integrate this into the possibility, right? Maybe, we don't know, but maybe within their 90%, they actually saw something out of the corner of their eye about their uncle and another child that seemed kind of weird, maybe inappropriate, didn't know what to do with it at the time, and just put it in that 90%, in the unconscious, and never thought about it again. But now that they're giving it a little bit of space, the psyche has time to kind of unwind it, and suddenly that's coming to the surface, right? That's one of the things that can happen, right? Or certain feelings, oh, I remember feeling this way around that person, Or I remember questioning something that came up from that person during this time that you're saying this thing happened. And there's a correlation, right? You give the psyche room to not only adapt to the new possibility, right, or other possibility, but you also give the psyche room to bring forth its own knowledge from the unconscious that it may not have buried on purpose, but just deemed unneeded at the time. So it's just right under the surface. Okay, so this is one way to work with the cognitive dissonance that comes up, is like give it some space and know that it doesn't have to be, it's either this thing is true or this thing is true. It's possible that more than one thing can be true, that even opposites can be true. We live in a world of contrast, of polarity, right? So it's absolutely true that both could be possibly happening at the same time. So give your psyche room to come to that on its own. Don't force, don't say it has to be one or the other. Just give space and know that it will find its own way. It's sort of like you got to have trust and faith in your own psyche. Try to be open without being definitive about something being one way or the other, and be gentle and kind on yourself and to the information that's coming forward that you may be holding in suspension, whether that's your own information coming up from within, or that's information that you found out about your community, about your environment, about your family. Okay. I imagine we'll probably do another video on this type of subject, but this is for right now. I think about it. Other than I want to say that this is a continuing process. There's going to always be new information coming forward because we are in a time of unveiling. We are hitting another great wave of awakening, and the layers are being pulled off. So if you're not going through it in your own personal journey, which everybody should be in some way, or I would think is in some way or another, some of us more deeply than others, right? But then the world is going through it. It's like, oh, and now this is true. So like, even if you're kind of, let's say you're waking up and you're just realizing how nasty and dirty the entertainment industry is. So 6 months ago, you might have been like, oh, now P. Diddy too, and then you got to hold that in like, oh, I used to like bump P. Diddy on the way to high school, or like whatever grade you were in, right? But you were like super into it, and like but this was actually what he was doing. Cognitive dissonance, right? So now you got to give it a little bit of time to integrate, and then there will be something new probably that will come, right? So there's going to be it's going to be a pattern, and I like to think of it more of as an expansion and contraction rather than a holy crap, a bomb went off in my world and now how to put my world back together, right? That's why we kind of kit and give things a little bit of suspension, particularly for, I know I said we were done with the subject, but I found a little more. Particularly for individuals with repressed trauma that comes to the surface. When you have something come to the surface that is so in contrast to what you consciously remember, it can be like a bomb going off inside of your reality. And you're like, how the heck do I put the pieces together? How do I find center? How do I know what's real, what's not real now? How do I navigate now? And it can be incredibly disorienting, painful, dismantling, right? And in order to kind of, I don't want to say avoid that, but temper that, even with these situations where it's like, maybe I'm the one that had the memory of my dad molesting me. It's not my sibling. I did. And my dad was the most perfect dad. And now I'm like, holy shit, my dad wasn't the most perfect dad. There's this other element to him. And I know this is true because I can feel it in my whole body and being. And the more I think about it, all these things are lining up and making sense, right? But instead of letting it completely destroy my center, I'm going to put it like right over here. Not saying you're not true. I'm going to put it right over here, and I'm going to like slowly let myself kind of pick off little pieces at a time. This is a way of titrating. We talked about this in another video too. Like I can digest this part of it. So that you have a little bit more time to integrate it into the reality. The psyche has time to adjust. The psyche has time to adapt. Because it is amazing at that, but it does need time. And if you're in a big inner exploration, you're really taking off the layers, you're really finding out truth. Maybe there's other layers you start to remember about your life and your experience, your trauma. This is going to happen more than once. And it's going to be like, holy crap, are you kidding me? I can't believe this. I don't know how to integrate this, right? You're going to give it a little space. You're going to do it a little bit at a time. And then it will probably happen again. And giving yourself that space so your psyche can adapt, figure out how to integrate what eventually ends up happening. Okay, so I don't want to make this sound like, oh my God, this is an arduous, painful process. I'm just going to, it's going to take the blue pill and go back to sleep, guys. It all comes together, and you get more of the whole full expansion. You see more. Your brain and your body and your being are more capable of holding the entirety of the consciousness and having fluidity between the conscious and unconscious, rather than it being like a solid block in between the two, right? So integrating cognitive dissonance slowly at a pace that does not feel overwhelming. All right, I'm going to leave it there, guys. Feel free to reach out about questions, comments, subscribe, find out more. We're going to be digging deep. I'm kind of easing everybody in, but we're going to be digging deep in the next couple of months. So I hope you stay tuned, and always feel free to put your input in. Many blessings and lots of love.